Let's bring in Dr. John Carlo, who is former president of the Dallas County Medical Society and also a member of the Texas Medical Association COVID-19 Task Force. Dr. Carlo, it's good to see you. Let's talk about schools here first. They're set to open in a month. Tell me your feelings about that as a physician.
Well, I think this is going to be a tough period of time. We're watching all the cases continue to go up this month. It's hard to believe that we're only a month away when school would normally start. And so, there's a lot of questions I think we still have, not only in terms of what's going to happen in terms of the number of cases, but really how you can do schools safely and how you take those measures as best as possible to continue physical distancing safely, but also create the learning environment that's necessary for schools. So, a lot of questions I think that are still needing to be answered. I think that we're just all going to have to do the best we can and try to figure out what's going to be the best pathway forward.
So do you think, knowing all of that DISD should and, other districts should push back their start date? Because I've talked to people who say, oh, well, this doesn't really affect kids. But I sort of think, well, are you forgetting about all the adults? The teachers, the cafeteria workers, the nurses, on and on, school bus drivers, right? Everyone who comes in contact with those kids.
It's not just about the kids in the school. Absolutely right. It's all the employees, all the teachers, all of the people that are going to be around the kids. But also, we know that schools and classrooms are the most socially dense environments in our community. In other words, we know that has always been the closest person-to-person distances always have happened in our classrooms. And what we worry about in that scenario is not just the kids, but what about the parents and the grandparents that are going to be around those kids that are in that socially dense environment?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So I want to sort of pivot and talk about this chart that the Texas Medical Association put out. I tweeted it a couple days ago, put it on Facebook and all that stuff. And, a lot of the responses, this is a garbage list. Who put this together? How can grocery stores be safer than beaches, for instance? And why are gyms ranked so high when it comes to being in a high-risk environment? Can you explain how the Texas Medical Association categorized everything that it did?
So what we did is we took the COVID-19 task force members, there's about 20 of us, as well as the councils on infectious disease and really our subject matter experts from the 50,000 physician membership. And we really asked ourselves, how would we rank these based on what we know about the science, what we know about particular risk factors in those types of environments, and we created the scores. And really, this is simply the average scores of all of our physicians that have weighed in on this for the TMA. And it's not perfect. We know that there's many things that we are struggling with right now in terms of really determining what's risky and what's not. But what we've tried to do here is create a guide. And really, it's really up to the individuals to make the best decisions. But we know there's so much information out there right now, and it's very complicated. We tried to create just a simple guide that helps people understand what the relative risk may be based on these different environments that we're likely to be involved with. So it's not a perfect thing by any means, but what it is telling us, perhaps higher risk environments, more precautions should be taken. I think that's the biggest thing is really to try to sort of gauge the relative risk so that people can make the best decisions possible.
Yeah, and were you guys, when putting that list together, does that take into consideration wearing a mask and social distancing in those environments and during those activities? Yes, okay.
Absolutely. It takes that into account, but it also takes into really the basic account is how can you stay 6 feet of distance from one another in that environment safely? What about the indoor versus outdoor environment? What about, how can you be socially distant in those settings as best as possible? So this, again, is a relative measure about how effective you can do that in these types of settings.
Okay, Dr. Carlo, thank you so much for clearing a lot of that up for us. I'm sure I'll talk to you again soon.